views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Good evening and welcome to BronxTalk. Tonight, it's the debate for the Democratic primary in the 87th Assembly District, a district that includes Van Nest, Parkchester, Soundview, and Castle Hill. In tonight's debate, we have all three of the candidates who are on the ballot, and they are Farah Despeignes, who is a longtime teacher and community advocate; John Perez, a single dad who served in the U.S. Army for 18 years, 10 of which were as a U.S. State Army ambassador; and Karines Reyes, a mom and a registered nurse. Thank you all for being with us. Tonight's program is co-sponsored by the Bronx Times, the Parkchester Times, and the League of Women Voters, a nonpartisan political organization that advocates for informed and active participation in government and works to increase understanding of major public policy issues. We're thrilled to have them all on board. The primary election is Thursday, September 13th, and all eligible voters are encouraged to vote. As we discussed earlier, candidates, in tonight's debate, I will direct a question to one candidate. That candidate will respond, and then we'll have a free-flowing dialogue with the original respondent having the final say on the question before the next question is asked. At the end of the program, each candidate will be given the opportunity to deliver a one-minute closing statement. Please note that tonight's questions include those submitted by the candidates themselves. By prior agreement, the first question will be directed to Ms. Despeignes. Nice to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
Since there is no incumbent in this race, and some might be unfamiliar with the candidates who are running, I thought it would be a good way to start to have each candidate talk about why they think their experience best lends itself to elected office. So just to give you each a chance to kind of introduce yourself to the voting public. Ms. Despeignes, you get the first crack at it.
Okay, hi. Thank you for having me. And my name is Farah Despeignes, and I'm running for the State Assembly District 87 because I believe that I'm the best person for the job. I'm actually the best qualified person on this stage. I've been advocating for this community since 1999, since I moved to it. I'm a teacher by profession, and I do not believe that when a community is in peril that you should stand on the sideline, because as citizens we have the obligation to fight for our community and for our people. So having taught in this community for so long, I know that the disparity in this community is so humongous that we need to all step up and step in and work to make this community work. So as a teacher, I'm sick and tired of children not having the resources that they need. As the daughter of an elderly woman, I'm tired of elderly people, seniors not having the things that they need. I'm tired of the lack of the economic development in our community. So I'm stepping up and I'm fighting for the rest of us.
Thank you very much, Mr. Perez.
Absolutely. Thank you, Gary. My name is John Perez. I am an 18-year combat Army veteran, 10 of which of those years I did serve as the Army's ambassador, and 5 of those 10 years I served as the Army's ambassador here in New York. Some of my duties included to go and speak to high school students, colleges, various colleges, including this one. I've appeared on many occasions to speak to the student body about what are the privileges of joining the service, but more importantly, what sets me apart from them, meaning that when I was growing up, there was a lot of guys that are probably not around, or they landed in jail or on drugs or whatever. So if I can make it, they can make it also. I want to be a positive influence to the community. Much more on my qualifications. I will discuss that throughout the topic of conversation. But to be an elevated voice for the youth and everybody in general, primarily for the youth.
I do want to just follow up on one thing because you're the first candidate we've ever had here wearing a uniform. Are you familiar with what the Pentagon recommends for people who are campaigning in uniform or who are former military officials?
Absolutely, the Hatch Act.
Okay, and so just to clarify it for BronxNet and for the League of Women Voters, the Defense Department does not support any candidates for office, and so you're representing yourself and certainly not the United States government when you're campaigning. I just wanted to establish
right. No,
that.
Absolutely, but as a retired Army veteran, I can wear my uniform.
Didn't say you couldn't, but
Okay.
I wanted to establish it because I know that concept is important to democracy and to the Defense Department. But thank you very much for your time today. Ms. Reyes, you get the chance to talk about yourself.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here, Gary. My name is Karines Reyes. I have also moved to this community when I was in 1999, almost 20 years ago. I am a mom, but most importantly, I am a registered nurse. I serve the community that I live in. I am an oncology nurse at Einstein Hospital. And I'm a labor leader. I've been vice chair of the bargaining unit for the Nurses Association at Einstein Hospital. I have traveled the country advocating for labor rights, not just for people in New York, but for workers all over the nation. And as a registered nurse, I don't just address the physiological needs of our patients, but also the social needs of our patients. We take care of some of the most disproportionately underserved people in the borough, and that includes, the elderly, people who are sick. We deal with social issues that come with our patients: homelessness, lack of resources, people who are on fixed incomes that can't pay for their medications, they can't pay for transportation, childcare, elderly care, all these social issues that encompass the borough and our state are things that I address every day in my clinical profession.
Thank you very much. Ms. Despaignes, you get the final word if you want to just add something to what you've heard.
Well, I'm glad that Ms. Reyes has been working so hard on behalf of the community. So let the record show that since 1999, when I moved to the borough, that I've been working on behalf of children, on behalf of seniors, on behalf of civic engagement and political engagement, because we know that part of the reason that the Bronx is behind in almost every category in the nation is because our people are not empowered. So I'm running to empower us.
Thank you very much. Mr. Perez, let's talk about crime in the Bronx and in the city of New York. Both the Bronx and the city have seen downward trends in crime, but of late there has been a disturbing uptick in the murder rate, particularly in the Bronx. How do we combat, to use a military term, this trend and kind of recapture our streets and make sure the trend is going in the direction that I think we all would like to see?
Absolutely. Crime has gone up, particularly in the 87th, in the area where I live, like 180th Street. From last June to this June, there have been 8 murders, unsolved murders, and there has been no representation there whatsoever to bring closure or to bring some kind of outreach for the community, for them to kind of work with conflict resolutions, which is a lot of the issues that are happening over there. There's conflict resolutions, whether this neighborhood belongs to me or that neighborhood belongs to the other person. But there's also, in the Castle Hill, we had a triple murder as well, which was not based on conflict, but there was an innocent woman that was murdered at the same time. So we have to address the community as a whole, and we have to go in there and let them know that we need to bring in those social services, we need to bring in those conflict resolution, and we have to start early. And hopefully it'll catch on so it doesn't become a larger issue later on.
Okay, others want to weigh in?
Yeah, I think
Reyes, go ahead.
you did mention that overall the crime rate has been going down. We have seen some isolated incidents in the district. However, I believe that a lot of these are ongoing investigations. We need to support our police precincts and the work that they do. But we also need to work. I support community policing. I support community involvement. And I think we need to bring more funding for our youth, keep them off the streets. Systemically, we've had a defunding of youth programs, and I think it's time that we start to invest in our youth more.
Okay. You want to weigh
Yes,
in?
absolutely. Yes, I do agree that we need to invest in our youths more. So the question for me is always why? Why are these things happening? And for me, it's not just important to address the victims. It is also important to address the people who are committing these crimes. And it comes back down to the fact that we are not investing enough in communities, enough in families, enough in the person. So once I become your assemblywoman, I would like to begin the work of addressing the specific issues, but not only as myself as the assemblywoman, but also us as a community, because these problems cannot be solved alone. We as a community need to step up.
Mr. Perez, you get the final word.
Yeah, I mean, definitely interacting with police and other community organizations are a vital component to address these issues. And by no way am I saying that, no, we should not include police department and other various agencies. But one point that she made, that Ms. Reyes made, was that for the past couple of years, there has been defunding for these programs. So why were they defunded, knowing what would be the outcome of it? So going into a district, going into a community and finding out, making an assessment and finding out what they need in order for them to be successful, that's what we need to do. That's what I'm willing to do.
Ms. Reyes, to you, healthcare, obviously you work in the healthcare industry. It's obviously vital for us all. 4 times the Assembly has passed the New York State Health Act, which would provide universal health care coverage, but the bill is stalled in the Senate. Obviously, as an Assembly member can't vote in the Senate, but what can an Assembly member do in the meantime to improve the health outcomes of Bronxites?
So hopefully after these primary elections, we do get a majority in the Senate and finally pass the New York Health Act. But in the meantime, I think we need to advocate for more funding, particularly for our safety net hospitals. We know that they take care of 70% of our Medicare and Medicaid recipients, which are predominantly in lower income neighborhoods like here in the Bronx. And they can't turn anybody away. So we need to make sure that they're fully funded, that we have those services for people who are undocumented, for those people who are uninsured. And in the meantime, continue to advocate to have single payer in New York State.
Okay, others want to weigh in about health care?
Yeah, absolutely. So
Ms.
I am
Despaignes,
the
yes.
daughter of a nurse and a nurse instructor. So I'm very familiar with the healthcare system. And I know that in order for us to have effective advocacy for healthcare, it is not enough for you and I and for the ones of us on the stage to actually advocate. We need to inform and educate our community so that they too can advocate for themselves and for us as a community.
Okay, and we assume, Mr. Perez, you want to weigh in on health care?
Sorry, yes. I mean, absolutely advocating is, again, another component. In the medical field, my son, who's in the audience, he hoped to be a doctor in a couple of months. Raised him on my own. That's the bearded one over there. Working with him, and that's one particular field that he wanted to pursue. So as far as the medical is concerned, yes, we do need medical, but we need the right type of quality medical assistance in the communities. It's not just to erect a building that's going to provide health care. What type of health care? Are they going to be covered? Are we going to be able to take away the copay, which is very, very difficult for people to pay? So what is discouraging people from utilizing these hospitals, and what are the hospitals that are earmarked as the worst? And go in there and try to fix the problem.
Ms. Reyes, you get the final word on this.
As somebody who experiences the disparities in healthcare every day, for me, it's very important that we have the services allocated for our constituents and our patients. But yes, we do need community involvement, and we've done a lot of that. A lot of the nurses, we testify on community boards and let people know of some of the issues that are going on within the hospital, but ultimately it comes down to funding and making sure that we have fully funded hospitals. And in terms of copays and things like that, I would hope to see single payer pass, so then we no longer have to worry about copays and things like that.
Thank you very much. Ms. Despaignes, on the BronxNet TV show In the District, you talked about improving education, about equity in education. You've mentioned and referred to it here, and also about additional resources for schools. The state spends more than $26 billion on education and more than $21,000 per student, which is 84% over the national average. Do we need more funding, or are there other improvements we can make to improve education in the 87th Assembly District, aside from potentially new funding, which is not always easy to get?
Right, and that's a great question, actually. So I really hear when people talk about funding, and funding is actually very, very important. But what is more important is structure and organization, right? And also that people are empowered to fight for the things that naturally should be a right. So when I think about education and I think about funding, because a lot of time we do waste a lot of money in funding, in education, in healthcare, in a lot of places. So we need to have systems and structures by which we make sure that the monies are well spent, but more than that, that the structures and organizations are set in such a way that we get the outcomes that we wish for. And that means checking in with the community, checking in with the DOE, with teachers, with parents, with children, students at all times to make sure that these things are working. And if they are not working, we need to make sure that we change course in the middle of whatever that is happening, because funding alone is never enough to solve a problem. And having been a teacher for so long, I know that the biggest problems that we have in education are not actually just funding. Structures, organization, involvement, and engagement.
Others?
Yeah.
Yes. Ms. Reyes?
Ms. Despaignes is actually right, and which is one of the reasons why I believe that we should be fighting for more transparency in terms of the Board of Education and how those monies are allocated. However, the Campaign for Fiscal Equity did come to a resolution saying that New York City schools are owed billions of dollars. PS 106 in Parkchester is owed over $2 million. Junior high school 127 in Castle Hill is owed over $1 million. I mean, we can look at systems, but at the end of the day, if they don't have the money to put those systems into place, then they can't really serve the students.
Mr. Perez?
I mean, I agree 100% on that, but that's not information that is new. That's information that we already have. We already know that the schools are falling apart. We already know that the standard of education in the Bronx is way below standard. The issue is how to fix it. Is not to continue to talk about what the problem is how to fix and create solutions to these ongoing problems. You've had elected officials in place for a long time, and every year they continuously talk about the same thing, and pouring money into a bucket with a hole in it is not going to hold water.
You get the final word, Ms.
Yes,
Despaignes.
and I agree with it. I couldn't say that better than pouring money into having you put it. But the thing, what it comes down to is that, yes, we need funding, absolutely. But more than that, we need people to be involved. We need people to know what they can do to help the system. We need parents involved. We need children involved. And we need to set up the structures that even if the money were not there, that we can do what is necessary. Because you know what, the truth is there are a lot of countries who don't have the budget that the DOE does have, but actually meet their standards in terms of what education should be. So I believe that the most fundamental point, besides funding, is actually engaging communities and families so that we can come to the solutions that are actually necessary, because one solution may work here and may not work over there. So we need to engage the communities and the parents.
Mr. Perez, if we say here on the program that the rent is too damn high, there will be nods from just about every Bronxite watching us right now. Housing in the Bronx seems to be getting less affordable with each passing day. What can you do if you were an assembly member to give Bronxites, especially those in lower income brackets, a fighting chance to be able to pay for their Bronx homes or apartments?
Absolutely. I mean, this is one question that I was hoping that I got first.
Well,
because
you got.
it would have given me the opportunity to discuss where one of my expertise is. And many years ago, I co-founded an organization called We Stay Nos Quedamos, which is something that you're very familiar with, under Yolanda Garcia, Pedro Cintrón, and a whole bunch of them. I was young, not younger, but
We
I
were
was
all
young.
younger, I think.
But we didn't understand what how to do this. And when there was already a plan in place, this was signed, sealed, and delivered, this was going to happen, a group of us got together and we were able to stop the city from gentrifying the community, from developing a 100-block radius, displacing everybody in there, and we had to come up with the hard question, what are we going to do about these people? So when you fast forward 25, 30 years later and we're still facing the same thing, this is what I see. I see that there's a lack of leadership, there's a lack of attention, and people are just steamrolling over our community, and it stops in the 87th.
Thank you very much. Others want to weigh in?
Sure.
Ms. Reyes,
So
go ahead.
the affordability crisis that we have, particularly with affordable housing, is multifaceted, and there's numerous reasons why that is. Gentrification is one of them, and we need to look at that as well. But also we have low-income neighborhoods here, people who are on the brink of homelessness, who receive like the home stability support program that we need to increase because that has not kept up pace with the cost of rent and cost of living. Also, we need to look at the formula by which we determine affordability. Oftentimes when we have new affordable development, it's affordable, but affordable to whom? So we need to look at that as well, even though that's a federal issue that's put forth by HUD, but we should look at the AMI formula as well. And ensuring that the new development that comes into the Bronx is affordable, it's built with union labor, so we can employ people in this neighborhood who can then afford to live here as well.
Thank you very much, and I guess Ms.
Yeah,
Despaignes.
so I would agree that, affordability, but for whom? So we know that in terms of the median earnings for Bronxites, we know that it's not very high. So when you say it's affordable, but for whom? Because what is affordable for somebody with $60,000 is not affordable for somebody who makes $15,000 or $20,000 a year. So I believe that we need to give the incentives to businesses to make sure that when they come to a community like ours, that affordable means for people like us. So gentrification is not an answer. So we need to actually retrain our community so that they can actually have the jobs that would give them the living wage, the kind of living wage that it would take to be able to afford housing.
Thank you very much. Mr. Perez, you get the final word.
Like I said, I mean, these stories aren't new. ZQA, MIA, and all of this other stuff, we understand it. And we understand it very well, but that is not solving the issue. That is not making it affordable. We can talk about it all day. For years, I've been hearing the same thing over in different communities, in different districts, and yet today, we're still talking about it. I can almost guarantee you that we're going to make as much noise as we can to bring attention and awareness to this situation, and we're going to put a cap on it.
We have time for one more question. We're going to have real quick answers, so I'm going to throw it out there, and Ms. Reyes, you'll get the first chance at it. We're getting 4 new Metro North stations in the Bronx. One of them is going to be in Parkchester, Van Nest. When you heard that, aside from the fact that that's a good thing, I think everybody would agree, what are the considerations that you will be looking out for if you were an assembly member to make sure that the installation of the station and the process goes well? And let's be, 20 seconds for each.
Very quick. That we use union labor to build it, and that we use people who live in the neighborhood as well. We want to employ those that live in the neighborhood, but also we need to look at the infrastructure considerations around that new development, so we can address traffic, parking, all these things that will then converge into that train station.
Thank you. Others, I got Mr.
Yeah,
Perez.
by the way,
we'll go right down the line here.
That was actually a Nos Quedamos project. We started that a long time ago. Also, the Sheridan Expressway was a Nos Quedamos project, so I'm very well familiar with it. It was in the topics of our conversations and possibly pre-designed for it. But yes, union labor to handle it, but equally to employ people within the district. But before we employ them, we need to train them. So we need to provide facilities to train these people in order for them to acquire that job, to do the job.
Thank you. Ms. Despaignes, you
Yeah,
got the
so
word.
I agree with everything that has been said, but I think one important thing that we need to think about when we think about the MTA in general is that the people of the district need to have a seat at the table. So for me, when I become Assemblywoman, the idea that the consumers should have a seat at the table, so when we're discussing projects, that their voice is always heard.
Candidates, we have come to the point in the program where we will allow you to deliver 1-minute closing statements, and by prior agreement, the first one will be by Ms. Despaignes.
Okay, so I'm running to become your state assemblywoman because I am actually the best qualified person in the district. Thank you. So I've been teaching in this district for 20 years. I've been advocating through Organizing for Action. I've been at the offices of all the elected officials. I've been in the mayor's office. I've been at then President Obama's office in terms of really truly advocating for this community. And I've given my time
30
for
seconds.
free at all times. So you know that when you elect Farah Despeignes for the 87th district, you're electing somebody who cares, who will fight for you every step of the way.
Thank you very much. Mr. Perez?
I wear my credentials. I don't have to really talk about them. I wear my credentials and I'll talk and I'll walk the streets. People know who I am. I've been in the district for many, many years. I've been involved in many organizations and I have founded several other organizations while I was released from the Army. This area, this district is that district I'm mostly proud of. This is where I met my son's mother. I've had 4 beautiful children from her. She is from the Castle Hill
30
area.
seconds.
And this is something, I didn't come in 1999, I grew up there, this is my area, and I know the people very well, and they know me as well. So on that day, I expect you to come out and vote for the better candidate.
Thank you very much, Mr. Perez. Ms. Reyes?
Hi, so my name is Karines Reyes, like I've mentioned before. I am a first-generation immigrant. I am a mom. I am a labor leader. I am a labor organizer. I am a registered nurse in this community. I have volunteered my time all over the world every time there is a disaster. I have a history of service, and I will bring that dedication and that commitment to the people of the 87th District and hope that you come out to vote for me on September 13th.
Thank you very much. Candidates, you have demonstrated the best of the democratic process by being here, and I know you will all agree with me that every eligible voter should come out to vote on Thursday, September 13th. Viewers will tell you, please note, it's a primary election, and so only voters enrolled in the Democratic Party in the 87th Assembly District can vote in this race. Also, we want to thank our co-sponsors. They are the Bronx Times, the Parkchester Times, and the League of Women Voters. For more information, please call the League of Women Voters at 212-725-3541. We thank you for watching. We thank our candidates. We thank our producer, who's Helen Greenberg. Our director is William Guzman. And please make sure you go out and vote, especially if you're eligible, on September 13th. Good night.